Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. About 3 years ago, Mike and Ray founded Toasted Oysters, a venture that started over some research and a couple of backyard drinks, and one that is also part of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. I have to admit, until we spoke, I didn't really understand what an oyster farm really meant, that it was a physical farm location in the water where the farm owners grow oysters. Sounds intuitive, but the physical boundaries of the farm are hard to fathom. But after 3 years of oyster farming in the Great South Bay off southern Long Island, New York, a neighbor of mine, they are doing a phenomenal job growing high-quality and very desirable Blue Point oysters. And they are also thinking about integrating agritourism to their business in the future, providing a water experience that exposes all that they know about oysters and oyster farming, including all the other aquatic life. This is Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. Enjoy my chat with Mike and Ray. So Matt Rudder introduced me or connected me with Mike. And obviously Matt's in a different state, South Carolina. So I guess, Mike, how do you know Matt? I wanted to start there.
I met Matt in October 2024 in Missouri at a stakeholders conference, an annual stakeholders conference that the Farmer Veteran Coalition hosts every year. The location changes every year. And I met Matt and Kara at that event.
Okay. So what's your affiliation with Farmers Veteran Coalition? I interviewed Jeanette who Lombardo, who runs kind of, I guess, the core organization. I know there are chapters all over, and I know
Sure.
Matt had an affiliation with them. And so,
correct. So
okay.
Similar position as Matt. I'm the president of the New York chapter. Matt was formerly the president of the South Carolina chapter, which is generally presidents of the chapters go to these annual stakeholders conference. I wasn't the president at the time. Just recently, within a few months, I've obtained that position. Jeanette is the head of the whole organizational nationally, and as a staff that's under her that handles different taskings or units or sectors, specifically one that just handles chapter presidents. When we have complaints or we need assistance with something, there's a resource for us to reach out to try and get whatever tasking it is that we would like to have done for our specific chapter.
So tell me, how did you get involved with them? I just want to know a little bit of your history. Like, why did you get involved with them? And then what's your, so now you're president. So that says a lot. Obviously, you're committed to the organization. So
Sure.
How did you get involved? How did you find out about them?
The Farmer Veteran Coalition has a logo that you can market on your products in various forms, whether it's on social media or on your physical packaging that you put your product on that you grow. And that logo is called Homegrown by Heroes. So Ray and I applied for that logo so we could use it for marketing purposes. We received an email from the Homegrown by Heroes section within the Farmer Veteran Coalition, and they asked us they asked veteran-owned farmers to put their business on a website called Market Maker. And this is a website that individuals, customers can go to and search for certain products and order them online anywhere in the 50 United States. Ray and I ended up doing that, and we ended up being the most viewed veteran-owned farm on Market Maker website in 2023. So Farmer
Okay.
Veteran Coalition did a spotlight on our farm in December of 2023. And that's kind of how I started learning about the organization. I was asking and inquiring, do you have a chapter in New York? Who's in charge? And started sending those emails around and eventually became a board member. And then leadership changes and organizational restructuring had happened. And now I fell into the president spot at the moment.
Now, where do you reside? You're on Long Island, right?
I'm in Long Island. I'm in Spionk, New York, or Spionk,
Okay.
Long Island. So
Okay.
close to where you sort of grew up,
Yes.
but from doing
Yes.
my research on you a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. It's nice to talk to a fellow Long Islander. I don't know if
Yes.
I've interviewed anyone on Long Island yet. I've been
So
all
you
around
can
the
talk.
world.
You're allowed to talk fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Although I have met some people who are not from Long Island who spoke actually faster than I did. I had to slow down the recording.
Yeah.
So the I just want to so the organization do you have a lot of members from Long Island in the coalition, or is it more New York State, upstate?
In the entire state, we have about 1,240, 1,250. It kind of changes as we gain membership, lose membership. On Long Island specifically, we probably have less than 100, and that
Okay.
changes because some individuals have been on the list and they've ceased farming and they haven't been taken off.
Okay.
So it's not always 100% accurate, but 1,240 to 50 statewide.
Okay. Well, hey, that's great. And I'm happy to hear that because I wasn't sure what was happening in New York.
Yes.
Okay, so farming. You have a unique farm. So talk to me how you guys connected. Ray, why don't you tell me a little also about your background, how you guys connected and what you're doing? I want to learn all about this business.
Yeah. All right. So, Mike and I have been friends for a long time, and we started out as partners, working for a small private ambulance company. Both of us were kind of there on the, side, kind of a side gig, and we were working for a small private, and we were, we kept in touch, and I worked for a very large agency. And actually, Mike came there for a short time, for a little while too, before he went off to other endeavors. But we kept in touch, and it's over 20 years now, pretty sure. And we just kept in touch the whole time. He went off and had a whole career outside of emergency medical services. And so, but we just kept in touch and got used to get together. And when he would come back into town, we'd hang out a little bit. And I got involved with the idea of starting my own business, doing oysters, probably about maybe 6 years ago now, right, Mike?
About that, yeah.
Years ago. Yeah, so I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. I've had multiple little businesses here and there. Never as involved as this one. And I have a small business doing training. I'm a career EMS paramedic, and I do education. So I have, so I've been doing small businesses kind of on the side for a long time. Not the scale of this though. So it was always small stuff. And
Okay.
then, as far as I was thinking about this a lot, like the transition of my career of needing two knees. I needed to replace my knees. I kind of have a back that's a little bit, and the business of EMS is you sit in an ambulance and you jump out and you jump into action,
Yep.
and have to be ready to work. And my knees were kind of done, so I needed to transition to something else. And I was thinking about, what do I like to do? And I like to be on the water. So I said, what kind of business can I have where I'm on the water, where I don't have to, like, it's hard work. It's hard work, but it's not like it's not emergency work. I'm not jumping out of anything. I don't have to, run and carry people. Everything's planned. I can use the Davit if I need to lift something heavy. We used to have to carry people to the ambulance, and that was, that's hard work. It's labor intensive.
Yep.
Not quite the same as, although I don't want to diminish how hard it is to lift those oyster bags into the boat. Sometimes they get heavy. So, but we have multiple people, so it's planned a little better.
And so, Mike, tell me your side of the story as far as how did you, like, who came up with the oyster idea? Did one of you and then the other one kind of came on board, or where
Yeah,
did that come
well,
from?
yeah. So, like I said, I was doing a lot of research, and I was thinking about a charter boat. I was thinking about stuff, and I was doing research.
Okay.
I actually watched a video of a gentleman from Connecticut, and I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but it was greenwave.org. And they
Okay.
talk about 3D farming and how in an acre you can grow a substantial amount of food, whether you use sugar kelp, clams, oysters, mussels, and you can scallops, you can grow in an acre. In fact, I think the quote was in the size of the state of Maine, if you grew that on the water in this size, because you can go depth, you can go down, you know, and I think you can grow enough food for the entire country in the size of it, like you could grow a lot of food because that 1 acre is many acres because it goes deep.
Okay.
So this 3D farming idea, and I kind of got hooked on that, and I started doing some research and realizing that this was a project that was going on all over New York. They were doing the Billion Oyster Project, and I started researching that. And then I saw that town of Islip had already had, a group of oyster farmers out there. And I think at the time may have only been 20 or so, when I was doing the research, and there was a list, which I'm still on the list. That's the other part. Is that the list was very lengthy. So there's a lot of people who wanted to be involved. So
Okay.
so we got on the list. So then that's really how I got into it. And that's how I came up with the idea. And I took a class, and then Mike and I were sitting in the backyard around a fire having some beers, and I started
That's
telling
how
him.
it usually starts.
So that's
So, how long ago was that?
This is around
5 years.
November 2020, September 2020, somewhere
Yeah.
around there.
So, when
And
you were sitting there having that beer, Mike, and he presents you with this idea, what were your thoughts at the time?
I'm naturally intrigued and curious and wanted to understand more. So Ray elaborated a little bit more, and I've learned that he was taking this oyster farming class with the town of Islip. And after speaking with Ray a couple hours, I took the next class. I've always had an interest in farming. I'm from the East End, born and raised. The landscape out here currently is very different than it was 20, 30 years ago, where farming was more prevalent.
Yep.
My family was involved in farming on the North Fork, um, doing potatoes. And so I've kind of have that. And I grew up as a kid with my grandfather. We had a very large market type of garden. So we would grow our own food, vegetables, whatever it is. We grew everything, sell some stuff on the side of the corner of the yard,
Yep.
in an honor stand. So I naturally had that farming instinct or interest. Ray, and I was pivoting in my career and looking to transition into something. And I was looking into farming. And then Ray had brought up this topic of oyster farming. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Let me take this class. So I took the class right after Ray, same instructor. It's basically a familiarization, learn about oysters, learn about some of the farming techniques, learn about how to purchase oyster seed and the methods that it's going to take to grow to a market size oyster where you can sell it. You take these, they give you about 500 to 600 very small oyster seed, and you farm them in bags on this instructor or professor's farm. And we did that. And we also volunteered on this farmer's farm and started learning, the beginning, the stages of farming from the very small oyster seed to getting it to the restaurant, to the distributor, to someone who calls us and wants a dozen. And that's kind of my story and how that.
So, okay. So, he took the class, you took the class, and then what happened next? Did you form your business? Like what was the next step with this?
Yeah.
You
Well,
have
So
to get certified or anything? Like, I don't know
yeah,
if there is any type of process, especially I'm not familiar with any of this, so I'm really curious how this all works.
Yeah, so we had gotten on the list, and we were waiting for the list, and there's, I think it's around 200 people on that list still, and there's only 23 farms
Okay.
in the town of Islip. So we continue to, be involved with helping, our goal was to try to get one off the list, but also just be involved with other people that are in the industry. So I'll say Mike actually did a lot more time volunteering at one of the other farms. And we developed, he really developed some relationships with some people. So when we heard that there was a farm available that was going to be sold, the businesses are all set up essentially the same way. They're set up with an LLC that has an agreement with the town of Islip. And that's because there's also a lot of permitting that has to be done. So you have to have permitting from the DEC, you have permitting from the Army Corps of Engineers. So there's a lot goes into it that they want to see it be sustainable and not necessarily attached to one person. So it's the LLC, so it's a business. So so it kind of makes it so it's easy to continue its life that
Okay.
attached to somebody's name. So if something happens to that person now, would all the agreements and everything go away with that person? So it helps. I think it helps keep everything really well organized and keep it so that it can continue. You
So let
know,
me ask a question. So you said there are about 23 oyster farms in the town of Islip.
Islip, right?
Okay. So I presume that the other towns on Long Island potentially have their own set of farms and criteria.
And some of them are towns, and some of them are through Suffolk County. Suffolk County. So
Okay.
it's and as far as the intricacy of how the town gets involved, I'm not certain about how all that happens. But there, if you're going to get a lease in Peconic, you have to go through Suffolk County,
Okay.
right, Mike? I'm telling the truth, right?
Yes. So all the North Fork oyster farmers are associated with the Suffolk County aquacultural lease program, and it's a different process, different interview process, different everything than it is with the town of Iceland.
Okay. So now I'm going to, I feel like so when we're talking a farm, okay, is this like, where is it? Like, where is it physically? Are are you out in the middle of the sound and the bay, or I don't, how does it
Yeah,
work? Like,
yeah,
I'm
no,
like, I need a
we're out in the
picture
middle.
in my
We're out in the
mind.
middle of the bay. Like there's an area
Okay.
that we have a GPS location, like designated by a GPS location, and it's longitude and latitude, and marks the four corners of our farm, and inside that 3.5 acres is what our farm is, and they're all not all the same. They're different sizes. And, when, what we do is we go out there with, our phones and get the GPS location off of the list that we have. And then we put a buoy out, yellow buoy, and we mark the corners of our farm, and that's
Okay.
our area that we're designated to grow stuff in. And this is and when we harvest, it's from this area that's very specific, you know.
Okay.
So it's on our tags and everything. So it's very specific and it's ours. I mean, this is, our business. So it's set up exactly right within those confines.
Do you have any problems with protecting it?
Yeah, it's we get that question a lot. And um you kind of to go on our farm, you kind of really gotta know what you're looking for because we have a lot of stuff. You go in those bags, you're just going to find little seed, and it's not easy to open them up. Like you kind of have to know how the cages work. And we have not had any issues. I'll say that there are people that have had issues with people taking equipment. I know that that's happened. I don't think it's very common. I haven't heard of it in the multiple years that the 3 years that we've been out there operating. I've only heard of it once. Um, and I've never seen anybody out there. So I've never seen in fact it was funny. We have a group meet and I went out there with my other boat, which is not a work boat, like it's a pleasure craft, right? So it's a jet boat. So I go out there with my jet boat and all of a sudden, all over the group me is like, "Who's this guy? Who's this guy? Like, who's this?" And they're taking pictures of me and they're putting on the group me, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, that's me."
That's great,
Okay.
though.
So
Hey,
we have
that's good.
we
They're
have a
looking
little
out for
security
you.
force out there. We have a little security force. If there's people out there, people are checking everyone out. So all the farmers are watching to make sure nobody's, you know, operating on
And,
someone's farm.
and it's hard to get where we are because we're in
Okay.
unnavigable waters. You really have to know the channels are very, very skinny, very, very small. If you don't know it, you're going to beat your boat on a sandbar because our farm is 80% sandbar. So we're walking around while we're farming. We're not specifically on the boat doing anything. Other processes of the farming, we are on the boat, but for the majority of our time, we're walking around. So if you don't know where you're going, it's kind of undesirable for
You,
any of the pleasure crafts that are out there.
you wouldn't want to bring your boat in to where we are.
No.
Like, you're not getting out quick. You might get stuck there for a couple hours. You could get stuck. That's why I'm very fortunate with the jet boat and the skiffs and the boats that we use. We're using specific style of boats so that we can get in and out.
Okay. So when you had said that, so these some of the you had to wait for a farm to become available and purchase it from someone.
Yeah, there was someone, and this is pretty common that people invest a lot of time in developing these farms, and they develop all the equipment, and some guys are making their own equipment. They're putting out lines, they're putting anchors, they're building this essentially from the ground. And when it's time for people to move on, sometimes it doesn't work for them. It's not um, they sell it as a business, and that's how the majority of them. There are people that turn it over to the town, but most of them get sold.
Okay.
There's a value to all that. There's a value to all that other work that they've done. Just having the Army Corps of Engineers permitting takes. Mike will tell you how many hours he
I
spent on
can
all
im-
that.
I can imagine. So do people want to, like, there's 23 in the town of Islip. Is there a possibility to have a 24th, or I guess that's a whole process, or do they have a maximum that they will take because of, the capacity of the waters or something?
Well, so in the area that we're operating currently, that's the maximum amount that they are permitted through the Army Corps of Engineers and with the
Okay.
D. So that space they're not gonna, there's not, as far as I know, unless there's something else going on, that's the maximum amount. They have been working on another 1,500 acres
Oh,
for a
wow.
few years now. That is all deep water. So it's a completely different type of operation than what, like, you can't walk around like me and Mike walk around. This is all 3D farming style, which I was talking about a little bit earlier, where you're going to be working off the boat. So
Okay.
you work off the boat, and there's a lot of guys that do work off the boat type of farming. We're very fortunate. I like getting in the water and walking around. So I like the way we do farming here. That's a whole different type of operation. They've been working on those 1,500 acres. Um, it's still in the process with the Army Corps of Engineers. Um, and we have been told that it's going to be approved, but it's kind of in the works.
All right. So tell me about the life of an oyster farmer. What's your season, at least by us?
24/7.
24/7, but certain months?
No.
No.
If you have
Okay.
oysters out there that are large enough to sell, you got to sell
Okay.
them. So if it's November and we still have product, you should sell that product. So we
Same
and
as January. If
right,
it's January and you have oysters, just sell them.
yeah. So the issue that typically so far what we've seen is that once we get oysters that are big enough, they get sold. Like they sell, and then we run out of we've run out of product to sell, and that's what we've over. As soon as it's available, and we tell people it's available, people buy it. Blue Point oysters are very desirable, so they're not hard to sell. People want them, and they
So
sell pretty quick.
you're out there all year long?
Yes. I mean,
Wow.
in the winter, we're out there doing maintenance, and we have to keep all the cages. I mean, this winter we got iced. The bay froze this winter, so that was bad. that was not good. That was not good for us. And we have, we have a lot of equipment out there. So, we have to safeguard that equipment. So that's, that chain, we were hoping we weren't going to get ice. So
Mhm.
Is that
And
typical, or is that something that,
it hasn't happened in 10 years.
I was just saying regarding the winter, it does slow down in maybe on the New England side with the sales. Christmas
okay,
is somewhat busy. However, there's other markets where Ray and I are one of 18, 20 people that or farms that have interstate shipping permits. We can ship to 50 United States, the 50 continental states. So
wow.
we can do that. Logistics sometimes is great. Sometimes it sucks. There's markets down in the south that are booming in December, January, February when we're slow. Our biggest problem is just getting out there if there's ice. What you do in the fall, when you start getting close to end of September, October, you start sorting your farm with your machines to make sure you know where your small, medium, large, for example, are. So when your markets are going to be in a certain spot. So when it is cold and you're freezing, you're going out in a very short time period. You know exactly where you're going, grabbing the order, and then coming back in for the most part.
Wow.
If
Okay.
it could be cold, but if there's no wind, the wind is what gets you usually. And if there's no wind, you could be working for 6, 7 hours in January and be beautiful out.
So what is the life? So how long does it take to go from a seed to a full oyster that is sellable?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. The answer is classically 18 months.
Okay.
But they don't all grow the same speed.
I didn't
Sometimes,
realize it was that long.
yeah, it's about 18 to a market size oyster. To a 3.5 inch oyster market size. And a lot of people don't. That's a. It's funny because we talk about that being a market size, but most of our requests are for cocktail oysters. So oysters that are a little bit smaller than that. So most of my customers want 2.5 to 3 inch in that range. That's the majority of what my customers want. So because they're serving them on a plate, and the bigger ones don't look as nice. I guess, if you depends on what you're doing with them. If you're grilling them, it's a little bit different.
I just wanted to caveat the oysters we're growing. We touched on a little bit, are authentic Blue Point oysters. The Blue Point oyster is grown in the Great South Bay only for a minimum of at least 3 months, and has to be harvested from the Great South Bay. We are known for our flavor. We have the Fire Island inlet that's hitting our oyster cages in bags, twice a day with the flush of the inlet. We're very salty and sweet, and and we have a deep cup. We get deep cups just because we have a high water flow rate where we are. So a lot of the oysters are bouncing around each other, chipping each other, which helps stimulate growth. So that's how they start getting that cup, is by that constant water flow.
In general, like how many different types of oysters are there? And then if you want to talk a little bit about in the Northeast, and then talk to me about the significance of Blue Point oysters and what makes them so popular.
All right. So there's a lot of different oysters. I mean, the oysters on the West Coast are significantly different than oysters on the East Coast. And honestly, I'm not a marine biologist, so I can't go into great depth of trying to explain all the different species, whether you're in Maine or where you're in Rhode Island or Connecticut or Virginia. It's the same species of oysters that we're growing here. And what makes it different is the I guess not I guess it's the impact of the water that they sit in.
Okay.
So, in Rhode Island, there's lots of salt ponds, and there's different places where, you talk about brackish water, where it's fresh water and salt water, and those have different flavors, the Great South Bay has a distinct flavor, and it became very popular, as being, a very salty, sweet oyster. And the Blue Point name stuck. And, there was probably some good marketing done, to help make that name be popular, and it became a very strong name, and then everybody wanted to steal it.
And weren't they desirable a while back?
Yeah, I mean, there would be stands on the streets of New York City selling
Oh,
oysters.
wow. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah. They would sell
Excellent.
oyster stands.
And we commonly refer to our species of oyster as the eastern oyster. The Latin term is Crassostrea virginica, but everybody around here just simplifies it to call it an eastern oyster, which is different from the West Coast. They have a different species of oyster, but like all oysters, no matter what coast, as Ray had mentioned, that it's what body of water the oyster is grown in is going to have that flavor. And again, where we are in the Great South Bay, we have that flow of water that gives it that salty, sweet taste, which people like.
Right.
And Queen Victoria, when the British had occupied Long Island, they were harvesting oysters out of Blue Point, Long Island, and the Queen Victoria would only allow those oysters in the palace in the United Kingdom.
That's pretty
and
impressive.
That kind of gave it some notoriety as well, and still known as Blue Point Oyster today.
So I just want to go back to the process. So they're in bags, you said. So the seeds are in some type of bag.
So we use these polypropylene bags, and they're mesh bags. So I'd say they're about 4 foot by 2 foot, somewhere in that range. So there's 6 of those. They go in what we call floating cages. The cages have pontoons on them. They float on top of the water. This is how we do it, but there's 15 different ways to do this. Some people do them on the bottom. Some people do just floating bags. They put pontoons on the bags. So we use floating cages. Each one of those cages holds 6 bags, and that's how we store them. And depending on the size, depends on what mesh size. So we get very little, baby seed, that's 4 millimeter. That has to go in like spat bags, and they go in bags that have very little holes. So, and then as they get bigger, they get put in the 9 mil bags, and and ideally that's what we like to use because we have a lot of those.
So you're actually switching them out into different bags, like
yeah,
okay.
and they have to. You have to do that too. I mean, you have to maintain them because there's always other growth. So there's other things that are fouling the shells and the other things growing inside. In fact, we had a few bags of that were really attacked by mussels. Right? We had like good 6 solid bags that got infiltrated with mussels, and those mussels basically took over the bags, and the oysters died. So I had to take them home and eat them to punish them.
So actually that was my next question. Like, what can impact the growth and your farm? Like, there's a lot going on in the waters. What can impact your business and the growth of these oysters?
Ray and I were just discussing this this afternoon. The warm water really helps us get, in conjunction with the water flow, the high flow rate, really gets us the growth that we're looking for. So in the months of June, July, August, we're looking for these oyster seeds to pop, essentially, just like popcorn out there. And we haven't really been getting that in the last 2 years. The water temperature hasn't really been maxing out at the desired time frame.
Really?
We would like, in June. So we've been noticing slower growth last year and specifically this year. And we have our secondary crop that's ready to come due, which should be due very soon. And it's almost there, not quite there, but should have been there. And that's how do you manage that? And you have customer base that you're trying to, and accounts that you're trying to satisfy on a weekly basis. And then if you run out of your previous inventory and you're waiting for that, we stagger our crops year by year. What we're going to harvest very soon was planted a year and a half ago, almost a year ago. So that the water temperature and the weather has been an issue the last 2 years.
Anything else? Anything like, I don't know, pollution or like you said, mussels? Are there any other types
I mean,
of...
there's all kinds of stuff that wants to grow. The barnacles will want to grow on the oyster shells. Anything that obstructs flow through the cages. So if we get like hit with a lot of seaweed that starts growing, mussels are a big one. We got hit with mussels twice, pretty hard with some of our mussels and the barnacles. And when they start growing on the bags, and in the bags and on the oysters, that impedes water flow. So if you impede water flow, And I also wonder if there's a little bit of competition with some of those other animals for the algae that they eat too. So I wonder if there's a little bit of competition there because they need to be fed. They need to have the right algae,
Right.
to eat also. So but yeah, we have to that's why we have to take the oysters, our oysters, we air dry them. So our goal is to do it once a week. We get them out, they get them out of the water. We flip the cages so they're up and out of the water and in the air. And then depending on the temperature, we let them air dry, right? And that kills all the stuff that's growing on the bags and on the oysters, you
Okay.
know. So we air dry it. So like when it's weather like this, we keep it out for 8 hours, if maybe a little longer, and it air dries and the oysters, dry out and all the stuff dies, and then we flip the cages back.
Okay. Sounds like I didn't realize the intensity of this, and I didn't realize it was a year long. That's crazy. Okay, so Toasted Oysters, where did that name come from?
That's another Ray answer.
Well, I
Uh-oh.
mean, me and Mike were having beers, and that's not an unusual thing for me and Mike to do when we get together. We've
I
had this,
see. Is that the logo there?
yeah.
I see. Yeah, I very cute. I like that.
So I came up with that on a bar napkin.
Hey,
That
I get it.
that was drawn on a bar napkin, and then we gave it to a professional to have them, clean it up and make it look really good. And
Excellent.
I don't know. We were pretty excited about having something like this, and when my son also kind of contributed when we were coming up with different names. He kind of came up with the Toasted Oyster name, So I have to give him a little credit. He's another kind of entrepreneurial type of guy too. So
Good. Love hearing that. So the toasted, like, did it have anything to do with anything, or
had to do with us having beers
you were
and
State of mind.
toasted?
State
Okay.
of mind.
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. Just
So
The
wanted to
oyster.
make
so
sure.
the oysters are raw. We're toasted.
Nah,
I like it. Okay, so your customer base. So you said that obviously, like if you looked at the percentage wise, how much is local, what percentage is local versus, you're able to ship. So what percentage goes out to other states?
yeah. The oyster market is saturated here in the New England area. All the way up from Maine down to Virginia, Maryland. There's a lot of farms that have different flavors of oyster, but there's a lot of oysters for sale in New England and the New England market. So locally, you start seeing competition between other farmers that are 5 miles away from you or your neighbor, which we try to avoid, because that doesn't nobody wins in those types of
Yeah.
disagreements. There's other markets that we favor, and that's moving volume to distributors or wholesalers, where they order a specific amount a week, you deliver, and they handle with the local deliveries, and they're kind of managing those relationships with the restaurants.
Yep.
We have started doing some restaurants locally and supplying them with oysters. But in the beginning stages, I would say, I mean, not that we don't want to go into a retail market. We do. We're definitely focused on that. But in the very beginning stages, we want to put money back in our pocket for our investment. And the fastest and easiest way to do is just move volume. Get it off your farm, get it to the wholesaler, get your money, and then start the process and start getting on that start staggering your farm so you have your cyclical crop come in, which is where we are now in our third year. We're at that point where, all right, our crops from 2 years ago, a year ago, are starting to come in. Now we can start engaging restaurants, managing those relationships, and charging a little bit of a higher price, because now they're going to order less, but they're going to be expecting maybe a different type of quality than a wholesale they would expect from a wholesaler.
Okay. And
That answers your question.
yeah, no, it does. Going into this business, I guess, did you kind of know that that was your plan, or did you kind of wade your way through that? Because I know sometimes people don't think about, how am I selling this? Was that your plan from the beginning on how to evolve that?
I felt pretty comfortable that we were going to
Yeah.
sell them. I mean, from talking with other farmers and the experience of what I saw and the research we did, we felt pretty confident that, and it's it's all about your price point, right? So so you're going to be able to move them. It just, can you move them at the price you want to move them
Yeah.
at? So that's you know, we felt pretty strong about seeing what, we were willing to put the work in, to get the top product. So I mean, our product, I'll put my product on a Michelin star restaurant plate. I mean, we have the best oysters out there. You're not going to see any kind of growth on them. Some of the other people that do oysters don't spend the time that we do making sure oysters are taken care of. Some of them just put them on the bottom of the bay, and I'm not talking about islip guys. I'm talking about in the industry. They just go out and they have 30 or 40 acres and they just spread the on the bottom, and then they come by with a big boat and they dredge them up, and they're not taken care of. So they don't have the same shell density. They break when you shuck them. Our shells are rigid, so when we shuck our shells, the hinges are tough. So then that's an issue. So there's it is other things that we do. We overwinter our oysters. They air dry. There's other things that get done to our oysters to make it so that they are the top quality oysters. We can go into an oyster bar and they're going to be very excited about having our product there because of not just the flavor, but also the aesthetics, the appearance, right? You eat
Okay.
with your eyes first, right? So if it looks like a good product, then that's how it looks, then that's going to taste better. So, and that's where we're ready to start supplying the Michelin star restaurants or the top seafood places that want to have the top tier oysters. We're ready to start doing that. Um, we're just making sure we have enough product that we don't run out. That's what I worry about.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how do you grow this type of business? You have a specific farm size, I'll say. Like, how do you grow? Like, what do you need to do as the both of you to grow this? And what is your vision for that?
Yeah, so we've talked about that a lot. I mean, how do we grow this? I mean, we need to develop a couple of strong sources of seed. So and we feel like we have that. We have multiple different vendors that we buy seed from because we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. We are buying seed at different times so that we're staggering our stock. So some grow faster than others. And that's another thing that we're being considerate of.
Let me ask
Uh,
you one question there. When you're talking seed, are there farmers out there just focused on that?
yes,
Okay. So that's kind of a whole other part of the industry.
yes.
Okay.
Which in
Could be an opportunity,
five
right?
years, in 5 years, that's part
Okay.
of our plan to be able to develop some type of facility that we could help do that because then that gives us a little bit more control over our own business because we have to
Absolutely.
rely on other people to get us the seed. So if we can build some of that, that redundancy, some of the so we
Yeah.
can have. And not that we would even put all of our eggs in our own basket. That's the other part about that. Because what if something happens to your seed? You have
Right. But I think
labor check, right?
it sounds like an opportunity because everyone's sourcing from different places. Just like you said, you want to find high quality sources
Yes.
and a diversity of them. Why not be part of that? So,
Yeah. And I think that you have to get really, I think that you have to, you're talking mastery level at that point, I believe. That you're talking mastery level knowledge of the industry. We're not there yet.
yep.
So, that's my feeling.
And when you start managing your own seed, which is you want it smaller, you're saving your profit margins increase at that point, and also you mitigate any issues with putting your eggs in all in one basket. But you definitely there's a cost benefit to having some very small stuff under your control, so you can take that 2-3 years for it to really get there, and it's really not costing you as much as it would if you started buying the bigger diameter oyster seed.
Okay.
Yeah, and me and Mike are working on that in that we're buying different size seed to even trial stuff. So we've bought some very small seed and we've learned some lessons from buying that small seed. And and so we're experimenting with having different sizes available to us so we can learn how to handle those issues.
Okay. And any other ways of like, for, I know there's probably a lot of ideas, but just some other ideas for expansion. How can you expand? Given, would you buy another farm? Do you need more space, or can you I mean, is there so much potential in the space that you have? You're smiling. I don't know what's going on. Like, is there so much that you can produce from the area that you're in?
I'll take the first part, and Ray can
Yeah.
finish it off. I think in terms of we're focused on this 3.5 acres. We may get an additional 10 acres, we may not, but when that happens, we'll grow into it for sure and figure out how to do that. But I think a lot of us, whether we're on the water or you go upstate New York or you go to South Carolina, we all, even those small farms, we talk about making farm enterprises and sourcing those different revenue streams. And how do you really get hyper focused and exploiting every revenue stream that you can get out of your farm? And just by namesake of this podcast, there
I was
are
going to ask.
opportunities. There are opportunities to grow into agritourism, which is a pretty big topic in the last few years. And there's a lot of, I guess, funding that's being thrown at funding opportunities that's being thrown at farmers to start this agritourism on their farms, whether it's a hayride upstate New York or you're coming on our boat to see the oyster farms. And Ray and I have talked about that. We do have ideas of what we want to do. There is also additional permitting. We're very the shellfish industry is similar to the dairy industry. We're highly regulated. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of things that apply to us that don't apply to the normal farmer who's not that he's normal, but growing corn or tomatoes. We're under a microscope for the most part. We're dealing with seafood, temperature sensitive, time sensitive. So there's things that we can and can't do with bringing people on our farm. And
I'd be curious. Um, I had, I don't know where it was. It might have been Connecticut. I saw someone doing that. They were doing like tours or bringing, people out to learn about oyster farming. So
Here.
yeah, okay. I haven't seen it here for some reason, but okay. So obviously people are doing it,
on a
you
small
know.
scale, they're doing it.
Okay.
And everyone has their little niche of what the experience is like when they're visiting their specific oyster farm. And we're going to develop our own niche.
So what are you seeing others doing as far as agritourism when it comes to oysters and oyster farms?
I mean, I think what I've seen is they make it almost like a nature event type of thing. So I've seen kayaks and some boarders out there, and I think that's really what they've done is taken out the kayaks and bring you out. And there's areas where you can walk around, so you don't my area, you don't need a kayak. You come out on the boat and you walk around, and and you can see what's really wild about our area, which I think, and I mean the Great South Bay, is all the other species. So when you're there visiting, and if you're out looking, at the oysters, I've had fish swim through my legs, and and we're covered with crabs, and there's all kinds of species. I remember flipping a cage and seeing a seahorse, which really really blew my mind because I've seen seahorses in fish tanks, I've seen seahorses on TV. I don't think I've ever seen a seahorse in the wild, you know. So
Right.
it says a lot to how healthy the bay has become and having this natural estuary where animals want to come and hang out and be. So today Mike was out there and what were those sea rays, cow
Cow
nose sea rays, Mike?
cow nose stingrays. They're
Stingrays, there we go.
migrating. They're migrating in the waters up here right now. So this is the first time we saw them this year. and they were all around the farm. And we were able to get a video of it and post it to the Instagram.
So I'm hoping that that's, when we are, inviting people out to come and share this with them, that they get that experience. They get to see all the other, all the other creatures that are helping our farm, that they're part of the farm, they're part of that environment. So
No, I think that's great. What a great experience. Absolutely. I love it. People are very into experiences and we live on the water. We're an island and I think it could be if you want to get into that, it could be an amazing opportunity. I mean, I have learned so much right now from both of you about the oyster farm. I didn't even know what an oyster farm really meant until I talked to you both. And then to, potentially taste oysters and just have that experience, out on the water would be, it would definitely be well worth the money. So I think it's something you guys should definitely explore, as long as that's something you like to do.
we've had people contact us.
I'm sure.
We've had people contact us asking us, and I'm like, we're not there yet. We're not.
Yeah, we're not there yet as a business.
Not there yet.
Okay.
There's
That's okay.
Almost.
Almost. We'll get there. I mean, we have all the pieces to make it done. I think the only thing I would need to get is our get a captain's license.
Okay.
Get a captain's license. That's one of the things that we need to get. So,
okay.
Other than that, we have the boat that would do fine. So,
Okay. Well, let me know. I want to go.
all right.
Sure.
So tell me, I have two more questions. What do oysters do for us in our waters? Like why are they important? I've read some things about this. I know Stony Brook has done some programs on this. Why are they important for our waters? And why is this farming important?
Yeah. So I don't know. The best way to learn about this is looking at the Billion Oyster Project. You look at the Billion Oyster Project, and they cleaned up the Hudson. I mean, like this was something that was a gigantic project that, I mean, literally, and people say, I would never do that. You can fish in the Hudson. You can fish in the Hudson. And this is from the Billion Oyster Project. So what it does is it cleans the water. Each oyster does 50 gallons a day
Wow.
of filtering. And when we had problems in the Great South Bay, and this is, we had for years, we had problems because the algae wasn't getting eaten, because they weren't we had raked up all the clams, and I don't say that disparaging. People make a living. They made a living digging clams. I mean, that's tough work.
Oh yeah.
I have dug clams for a few hours, and just
Me
doing it
too.
for a few hours, it hurts. So that's tough work, and people were feeding their families. But
Yep.
we did overdo it. We did overdo it, and the oyster farms really help filter that water, eat that algae, help create an environment for all these other organisms to grow. So when you go on our farm, when you come out on our farm and we flip the cages, you'll see all kinds of animals jumping out of those cages. Like we got all kinds of things, and the things I've seen out there blow my mind. And the amount of clams are back in the Great South Bay. I see people out there raking clams. They're all over the place. So
That's good.
we have put some beds down. Some of the oyster farmers have put beds down on their farm for clams. But besides that, there's clams out there that are not where they're planted. So the idea that those clams are gone, they're coming back, and I think it has to do with these oyster farms.
Excellent.
And a lot of, if you hear the terms red tide, brown tide, these tides are because of algae blooms, because they're formed by storm runoff, or the use of fertilizers on your grass that gets to our water table here on Long Island. We have a very unique water table, and eventually that nitrogen gets in the water, and nitrogen can assist and promote these algae blooms. Oysters help filter that and eat that nitrogen, so to speak. They also eat phytoplankton. And the other thing about the oyster farms that helps is our cages out there. are floating intertidally. So the floats are on top, the oysters are in their little bags in their bays of the cages, but just below the surface. That mitigates wave actions out there. So it mitigates shoreline erosion because it's stopping that wave or mitigating that wave energy or slowing it down just a little bit more than what it would have been if it was just free flowing wave that hit the shore.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. When you reflect back, each of you, when you reflect back, what's been a surprise? Like, like what surprised you the most out of this journey so far? Like anything that you're like, oh, I wish I would have known that, or anything you've learned in this process that really surprised you?
First thing, anything you bring on the boat will break. All right. So that's the first thing I learned. Anything you bring onto the boat, expect it to break because we break all things, the boat itself and anything you bought will break and you will have to go get a new one. And it will be extra expensive because it's on the water.
Oh,
So that's the first thing we've learned. We've already gone through one engine.
I was going to say, is there a story behind this?
Yeah.
It sounds like something happened.
There's multiple
There's
stories.
many.
By time we get the boat back, the big breaks, we get it back together, it breaks again. So I mean, yeah, I mean, so we so our boat is broken multiple times, and I think that's I think from talking to people, that's a theme that we didn't really have a lot of experience with it. But the term boats bring over another 1,000, right? So so I think that has lived up to the tradition here with our business. So that's the first thing that I've learned. What do you got?
Buy two of everything.
Yeah, buy two of everything. Right. And it's not how many oysters you can put in the bag. It's how many oysters can you lift in the boat.
Uh,
So you could put a lot of oysters in the bag, but if you can't lift the boat, you can't lift the bag into the boat because it's too heavy. You got a problem. And those bags get packed out. Those oysters, I don't know how many times me and Mike were like, holy cow, we have to empty this bag right now. It's packed. And like they'll grow. They'll just like 1 minute you look at it, it was like a third of the way full and you're going through it. And all of a sudden you go back and check on it and it's packed. They're all market size. They're all ready to go. And that's why, I mean, we use software to track our stuff now because this way we can keep track of it. And if we're not using something to keep track of it, there's I don't know what is it, about 600,000 we have right now, Mike?
More
600,
than that. We're over.
right? We have a lot of oysters out there. So we have to try to keep track of all those, and we're looking at some of these bags, they only have 200 in the bag.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of bags.
So when you say you're using software, what is it doing? It's out there.
We're tagging electronically, we're tagging a bag and they're like located. They're on our map. We have our farm built on a electronic platform that's connected to a mapping system, and they're numbered. And they're numbered, and those numbered bags, those numbered cages, tells us what's in them, and when was
Okay.
the last time we touched them, and how we, what size were they when they went back, when were they tumbled, um, how
And
many
basically tracking your inventory.
inventory.
So we could, Ray and I can go into the app independently and I can just be like, all right, what's in row, N5, cage G, I know what's exactly in there. And he doesn't have to discuss with me, everything's in there, and when you start moving product around or your oyster seed around, you're inputting that into the application. And
Right. So
it
if
sends
so,
reminders
if
too.
Mike's off for the day, which is rare, he's never off. And I'm going out there and I'm like, what do I got to do? Like, we usually will have a conversation. We talk every day, at least twice. So, but I could say, all right, I need to flip all these cages. These cages haven't been flipped. They need to be air dried. So I have an idea of what needs to be done. Or if I need oysters, I know, all right, well, these are where our market sizes are. They're in these cages. I can go to those cages and get the market size oysters.
Wow.
And then you can also send tasking out. Hey, we have a broken cage. We can mark the cage, assign it to an employee or assign it to one of us, to go fix it within a week, or we've learned that everything is urgent because no one answers the non-urgent tasking. So we make everything an urgent tasking. Or if we have a line break or the engine need check the engine oil, like we can assign all those tasks within this app as well. So you're tracking your inventory, keeping up on your maintenance, and we're both in the loop because we're not always in the same place at the same time, and it helps both of us manage the farm more efficiently. And
Wow.
that's, I think, the biggest step that we've taken in our third year is we have control now of the farm. We know where it is, what it is, and we know what we need to do to rectify any situation that comes about out there.
And that's our big plan, is leveraging technology going forward.
Yeah.
We're looking at more technology, how we can use technology, maybe even to flip the farm, how we can use technology to do some of the tasks. Maybe it doesn't have to be manpower.
Definitely, especially as we evolve with AI and all this. So that's terrific. You guys really seem to have it buttoned up. Very impressive. Very impressive. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that needs to be said about this business?
I would say that it's, there's a lot of interest in oyster farming. It's unique. You don't really meet too many oyster farmers, and everybody has 1,000 questions. The thing about there was a report that just recently came out that the United States research report, some think tank, from 2024 to 2032, seafood consumption is expected to increase by 25%. And that's fish and shellfish, and there's also a growing, um, I don't know what the proper word is, but people want to know where their food comes from now. They're the traceability aspect of it. And with oyster farming, we're able to, we just discussed it. I can tell you where that oyster was harvested from, what cage,
Yep.
what bag, we know that information, and people take a liking to that because they feel more comfortable. And you start seeing a lot of the slogans are buy local, buy local, buy local now. Stay away from the big box stores, and because the local guys can generally trace exactly where that food came from, which is what the customer is really wanting these
Yep.
days.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah.
How does someone find you? Are you on social media? You have a website?
Yeah. So, website toastedoysters.com. That's our website. And we do have an Insta account, which we're not the best at social media yet. We still need to explore that. We're working on it. We've been recently, this is the last few weeks, we've been talking about it, that we need to get better at it. So, I, part of it, I'm a little hesitant because me and Mike talk about this in our planning, because like it's great to be on social media, but like we sell lots of the distributors, so it's kind of tough. But it's something that we're going to get better at. Well, we're going to find someone to help us get better.
It would be interesting. I think you could do some really cool branding for the business and maybe the future, the opportunities of the business if you wanted to expand in retail and or agritourism. I think, building your brand, I mean, being out on the water every day, I'm sure there's some good
Oh
footage
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
could
yeah.
be that, like just about your journey and about this, how this business is evolving. I think that could be a lot of fun. I think you would get a pretty big following pretty quickly.
Yeah,
So,
we actually have a couple of events coming up, and if anybody went to Toasted Oysters on Insta, you'd see, we have a flyer of an event we're doing over at a bar aquatica over in Kismet, and
okay.
we have a video of us harvesting actually on the farm, that on that website, on that Insta account, and we're gonna continue to work on that.
Yeah, do it because it's educational and it's fun. I'd love to. I'm going to check it out definitely. And you said you had that event coming up. Any other events coming up?
No, that's it. That's it. This is our first big event that we're doing. It's at a small little place, and we're gonna go over there, and we're gonna bring over the oysters, and we're gonna have some of our accoutrements, and some of my I kind of like the idea that I'm like a semi pro chef, kind of doing my own little thing. So I have my own little ideas on how I serve oysters. So
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to check that out. Ray, Mike, it's a pleasure to meet you. And, I wish you all the best. And yeah, keep me posted. If you do start with some of the agritourism initiatives, let me know. And maybe we'll do a live episode or something.
For sure,
Well,
you're welcome on the farm. For sure.
yeah, I mean, you're welcome. We're this is the time to come out to the farm. I mean, the farm's we're set and ready to start bringing. You want to come out? We'd love to have you come out.
I would love to. I really would. I would love to see it. And yeah, we can do another segment a little more
Sure.
live. But yeah, I would absolutely love to. So thank you. Let's keep in
Yeah.
touch. Great stuff. I learned so much. So thank you.
Oh, great.
Thank you
All
for
All
right,
right,
having us.
guys. I hope our Agritourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time.